And then we got a question again about, do you think you could actually recast Tony Stark and Steve Rogers? Check it out.
Hey, John and crew. This is Lucas from Florida. I know you always say that Robert Downey Jr. will return to the MCU, and I think you're right. But I think it'll only be for a one-off in Secret Wars or something like that. Same with Chris Evans. So my question is, when do you think it'll be the right time to recast Tony Stark and Steve Rogers and bring those characters back in some way? I know the next few phases will be Fantastic Four and X-Men heavy, but are we really going to go 7 or more years without another Tony Stark and Steve Rogers? Thanks. Bring on the filthy.
All right, Lucas, thanks a lot for calling that in. And first off, yes, definitely Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans will be back. I don't care.
Well, John, there's reportedly an executive of Marvel that said the other day they have no plans to bring.
Yeah, they can say it all they want. They're going to have Robert Downey Jr. back at some point. Now, maybe it'll be something as small as a quick appearance in a Secret Wars. Could be something a little bit larger. Maybe he does come back for another, 2 or 3 picture deal. That's possible. Chris Evans, same thing. I mean, I just saw the trailer for Chris Evans and Ana de Armas's new one called Ghosted. I love Chris Evans. Everybody, how much I gush about Chris Evans. I love that dude. And Ana de Armas. Who doesn't love Ana de Armas? That movie looked terrible. Like, that movie looks awful. There's a very similar looking trailer that came out yesterday called Citadel that looks 100 times better. But at any rate, yeah, there it is. I mean, just that picture would make me want to watch the movie. The trailer did not make me want to watch the movie. But Chris Evans will be back. Again, maybe it's something as small as just Secret Wars, possibly. Maybe something a little bit bigger. Who knows? We'll see. But let's move on to the main part of the question that I was asking. At what point does Marvel just straight up recast Tony Stark and Steve Rogers? I mean, as he pointed out, how many years do we go in an MCU? Like, how many years can you go in the MCU without the Marvel Cinematic Universe, without the main Marvel heroes in Tony Stark and Chris Evans, Steve Rogers? How long can you go? So at what point do they just straight up recast these roles? I don't think they ever recast them. I don't. Now, listen, I believe an actor is a day worker. They come in, they play their role, they apply their unique sets of talents and skills to bring a character to life, and then they leave a project long before the project's done. They leave a project and move on to their next gig. That's what actors do. They're great. But that's why I also believe they are replaceable. But with something like the MCU, while I would be perfectly okay if Kevin Feige out on stage next week somewhere and said, we are pleased to introduce the new Tony Stark in our Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that new Tony Stark is Jake Johnson from New Girl. I mean, obviously they would do that, but I'm just pulling a name out of my ass here. I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay, but they'll never do that. These characters, like Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man, kind of defined the MCU. Chris Evans playing Captain America kind of defined the MCU. And they are now in the process of reinventing the MCU. Maybe some people would criticize a little too quickly, because in the last phase, they've been throwing just a ton of new characters at us. But still, they're in the phase right now that they are kind of reinventing the MCU. And honestly, I think they know, Rob, that were they to announce Jake Johnson, everybody loves Jake Johnson. If they were to announce Jake Johnson as the new Tony Stark, it wouldn't matter who they could announce Leonardo DiCaprio is the new Tony Stark. It wouldn't matter. I think the fans would not have it. To quote M'Baku, we will not have it. I think the fans would simply not have it. Same with Chris Evans. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, other than maybe a goof scene in a movie like Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, where we see a different version of Captain Marvel and maybe it's somebody else. Other than that, I just don't think they'll ever recast these roles. Rob, you've said before that you believe we're going to see Iron Man and Steve Rogers probably pop up in Secret Wars. Do you think a time could come that Marvel just says, hey, we haven't rebooted, but we need Tony Stark and Chris and Steve Rogers back. Let's just recast the roles. Could you see that happening?
No. And I'll tell you, I think that Chris Evans is going to be in New World Order. Old Chris Evans. And we're probably going to have a death scene where it's going to be the Return of the Jedi Yoda death scene talking to Luke, it's Sam Wilson.
Kind of like Steve talking to Agent Carter in what was it, Civil War before she died?
100%. That's what's going to happen, and there's going to be Sam's going to go to Cap for advice. He's going to be disillusioned after what happens, or something happens, and it's going to be that speech that Steve Rogers gives him that gives him the wherewithal to continue on. I would say, and then he dies because he's still alive.
Yep.
He's not dead. So
He's living on the moon.
But I do think that we are going to see a version of Captain America and a version of Tony Stark come back in Secret Wars, because it's the multiverse. It's the end of the multiverse. And it'll be, in a way, it's the way that they could do the Portals scene, where doors open throughout the multiverse. And I would imagine we'll see different iterations of Tony Stark. Can we say, there's already a Kang Dynasty that we've seen.
Yeah.
What a bunch of, iterations of these characters are what's going to turn the tide. I mean, the funny thing about this, John, is I watched Endgame over the weekend, on Disney Plus, and I watched it enhanced it for IMAX.
They have that IMAX enhanced version, right?
Yeah, because I'd never watched it. First of all, it looks fantastic on Disney Plus. The thing about that movie that struck me is so much of it is set in the real world. The opening with Hawkeye, but even a lot of the conversations, now they do go through the quantum realm, but then they go to the real world. They go to New York. They go to these places where it wasn't like on all volume stages, and you feel it more. There was something more immediate about it, and I think that they know that, and I think they're going to pull back a little bit and give us more of that reality. But people want to see, I think Secret Wars is going to allow them to tie off a lot of this. They'll tie it off, and people won't, because then they'll bring in the X-Men and they can reinvigorate. They've got a whole new universe and pantheon of characters that they can concentrate on, and they'll have the Avengers that remain. So,
all right, guys, question is for you. What do you think about that? Do you think that, number one, at some point we will see them return? Maybe Secret Wars is that target. Maybe it's something earlier like Captain America 4. And what do you think about the idea of maybe the MCU ever just saying, you know what, these characters are too important to our world, we're just going to recast them? I don't think they'll do it. Maybe you do. Maybe you can come up for good reason why they would. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. If saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2023, why are you still paying insane amounts of money every month for your phone bill? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order from home and save a ton with phone plans starting at just $15 a month. You guys know I made the switch over to Mint Mobile a while ago. The process couldn't have been easier, and I can't believe that I am spending less than a third of what I was spending on one of the other major carriers before. By going online only and eliminating the traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes the significant savings on to you. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and switch easily in minutes with eSIM. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea.